Thanks for having me, Redbrick, first of all, for Tech Week this year. For any of you who don't know, there's a whole bunch of other stuff happening over the next few days. It looks really cool. And I'm excited to be kind of the first little speaker or workshop thing besides the opening today, so that's cool. Today I'm going to talk a bit about Blender, give people an introduction, tell them what it is and what it can, show them what it can do, which should be a bit of fun. Has anybody used Blender before? Just see raised hands, people? Not many? Cool, that's excellent, because this is going to be a real beginner's guide to Blender. What is it? Does anybody know what it is? The people who haven't used it, I mean. Any ideas?
3D modeling.
3D modeling, yeah. That's actually, yeah, that's pretty good. Anybody else?
Animation.
Animation's a good one, yeah. It's on the list, I'll get there. Basically, Blender does a whole bunch of stuff. In fact, it does almost everything. Oh shit. But the point of this is, generally, these things are split into multiple programs. You might have a program specific for sculpting or for camera tracking, and you'd go from one program to another to another. With Blender, you can do everything in the pipeline. Now, it's not great at all of these things. In fact, it's pretty bad at some of these things, but it can do it. And the goal for Blender is to be able to do everything in the pipeline, which is pretty cool and pretty ambitious for an open source project. Personally, I think it's best at modeling. It's super quick. I have tried some other programs, and there are people here who have used other programs in the past. I find Blender, maybe because I just use it first, but I'm just much quicker at modeling with Blender than anything else. So today, we're going to go through and just do some modeling. We're going to do lighting, and if we have time, we'll do some texturing and maybe even some extra stuff if we have time. We'll see how we get on. So, does anybody use Blender in the industry? That's a valid question. Mostly no, but also yes. Blender has its strength, as I said. A lot of people, well, not a lot. I've heard of people using it as part of their pipeline. So they might use it for modeling, for example, and then export their objects and continue somewhere else. For game assets, people model in Blender and then bring it out to software like Unity. So people do use it in the industry. There's iOS games out there at the moment that, you know, the modeling was done in Blender, which is exciting. Is it any good? Mostly, yes, I think. It has its strengths, it has its weaknesses, as I said. There is a Blender Institute run by the Blender Foundation, and what they do every year is they'll have an open movie project where they will pay for artists and developers from around the world to come to Amsterdam, where Blender is based, for a period of 6 months to a year, and they'll make a movie, a short movie. And what that means is you get to find the shortfalls in Blender, right? If you have to do everything in the pipeline in Blender, and you go, well, we need this character to have hair, but the particle simulation for hair is really shitty. So you've got to get the developers on it to fix that so they can make their movie. So it really pushes the development of Blender forward, and it's actually now, these days, pretty good. So you might say that, and I might say that. So I'll show you a little clip, which is hopefully this works now. Cool. A showreel of some stuff that you can do with Blender. I hope you can see that. It's not great light. So you can see it as fluid simulation and dynamics. Photorealism, now with their new rendering engine, which we'll talk about in a bit. The last open movie project the goal of it was to do live action and do all the VFX with Blender. So that's some of the footage from that. It's not a great movie story-wise, but visually it's actually really, really impressive that it's done with open source software. Can anybody even see that? Yeah. So this is, yeah, that's some more footage from that movie. It's used in ad agencies for the ones that don't have any money, because it's free, and it's legitimately good enough. Also architectural rendering. But yeah, with ad agencies, a few of them do use it because it's cheap and it can do the job. This is another open movie project, not run the same way as the ones I spoke about previously, but it's pretty fun. Another ad agency we're using. So this low poly stuff seems to be really fashionable at the moment. Blender's obviously capable of that. So for example, shots like this need camera tracking, which Blender didn't have until recently, and the goal was to make a live action movie with VFX done by Blender, which couldn't be done if you don't have camera tracking. You just can't do it. So they had to just build it, they had to write it. It was a Google summer code project, and they got some students on it, and eventually after about a year of development, they threw in camera tracking, and it's now pretty decent. So there you go, that's a little intro to what Blender's capable of. Where the fuck is that gone? Alright, so we did that. So yeah, that was pretty awesome. Right? So today, we're not doing that. That kind of stuff that you saw takes months and teams of people, and generally you could be a really talented 3D artist and do everything. You could be really good at modeling and lighting and compositing and the whole chain, but most people aren't. So to do stuff like that, you've got a team of people. You'd usually have somebody who would do the modeling, and then that'd pass it off to someone who'd rig it and maybe animate it, and then there's a whole team for compositing who'd make it look pretty. Lighting is a whole other team. It's so we can't do all of that today, but we're going to do a really simple scene that's actually from a tutorial by Andrew Price, who is a Blender tutor online. So I'm just basically ripping off his thing today. We're making a can, right? So we're going to make a semi-photorealistic can, and if we have time, we'll put these water particles on them and stuff. This label is a texture. So that's called texturing. So to explain that, I just need to quickly explain the difference between vector and raster. Do people know this? I assume just kind of, yeah, no. At its basic level, if you think of a raster image as an image that's just made up of pixels, okay, and if you zoom in, it gets pixelated, all right? Vector is the magic of mathematics to basically just define points, and it's not just dots on a screen. You can zoom in and things will stay really sharp. All right, so that's kind of the difference between vector and raster. And in 3D, you'd have the model itself you can think of as like a vector. You can zoom into it as much as you like, but textures are rasters that are just kind of put on top. So if you're thinking of like modeling a human being, generally speaking, you might have skin texture. So you'd model a person's head, and then you'd map a raster texture over the top of that, which means that you can zoom really close into the model, and the model itself might look good, but the skin texture, if you get real close, will look kind of shitty. So we're gonna show you the difference between those things. So if people want to open up Blender on the computers, and I'll give you a little intro to the OS. You can lose your own laptop if you like, yeah. To open up Blender on these computers, you have to open up Alt F2 and then type Blender and hit enter.
Yeah, that'd be true.
Yeah. So that should open up Blender. Good, I'm seeing people open up here.
What version of Blender?
We'll get to that. Any version's fine. So I think the version of Blender in here is version 2.52, is that right? Or 2.5, thereabouts? Right, that's like super old. This is lacking a lot of the kind of features that that are in the latest versions, but that's okay. Blender has two rendering engines internally. One we call Blender Internal, and the other one is called Cycles. I'm not going to really get into the difference between the two. If you think of Cycles, makes photorealism a lot easier. It does real ray tracing. The Blender Internal engine, you have to fake a whole bunch of stuff, and it doesn't really behave like things do in the real world. We're going to use the Blender Internal because it's easier, it's a bit quicker. These computers I don't think could really do Cycles any justice, so we're just going to stick to the Blender Internal. If that doesn't make any sense to you, don't worry, we'll explain it in a bit. So when you open up Blender, you'll see something like this, and if you're anything like me, your initial reaction will be something like that. It's really off-putting. It's not the best interface in the world. No 3D program is really straightforward. Blender is something else though. The learning curve is just super steep. And the reason for that, there's a lot of reasons. The interface needs some work, and there are teams working on that at the moment. But the big thing is, a lot of things are backwards, right? They're almost the exact opposite of what you think they'd be. And there's two main things I'm going to talk about now. The first one is right-click. So to select things in Blender, you right-click, you don't left-click. So if you want to right-click on your cube there in the middle, and you can like drag it around and move it, I think. Yeah, so right-click to move it. That's almost the exact opposite of anything else, right? Usually you left-click on stuff to select it. Blender, right-click, select.
You can left-click.
You can use or change it. You can go into preferences and change it to left click, which you probably should do as a beginner. That might change, and there's discussions right now about whether that's the better way to do things. You get used to it, but you're more than welcome to change it. It's in preferences. Today I'd say stick with right click so my instructions make sense for everyone. And the other thing is this idea of object first then tool, not tool first then object. And what I mean by that is, if you think of Photoshop and you got the paint bucket tool, you'd click on the paint bucket and then you'd click on the object that you want to fill with that paint bucket. Does that make sense? That's how most programs work, right? If you want to resize it, you click the resize tool, and then you click on the object you want to resize and you resize it. Blender, you don't do that. You select your object and then you apply tools to it. So you can select your object and then press G and grab it and move it around. You want to try that? Right click and then press G, and you can then move with your mouse and the thing will move around. That's cool. Now what you can do is you can left click to leave it somewhere. And now you can press S and then move your mouse, and you'll see it'll get bigger and smaller. All right. So you didn't have to select it again. And that's the important part. You don't have to keep, but when you change your tool, you don't have to keep reselecting your object, which means you can do things super quick. You can make things bigger, you can rotate it, you can do all sorts of things super quick. When you've resized it to the level you like, just press left click to leave it at that size. So this will make more sense later on once we get started and we model something. But for now, the other so the third thing that are a little bit backwards is you initially you start by clicking on the tools, right? And then you can apply those tools, and it's like handy because there's icons and it makes sense. With Blender, it's so much easier to use keyboard shortcuts. But as a beginner, you don't know what the keyboard shortcuts are, so it's like almost impossible as a new user to use Blender because you don't know what these keyboard shortcuts are. Blender is almost useless without the keyboard shortcuts. The best thing about it is these keyboard shortcuts and how super quick you can do things. So I'm going to teach you a couple of keyboard shortcuts today. I don't want to blow your mind or anything, but I'm going to do a little cheat sheet here. We're going to have G, which grabs things, and with grab you can move it. All right. You'll have S for scale, so you can make things bigger or smaller. Right. E will extrude. You won't actually be able to use that now, but I'll explain what that does in a bit. It's kind of grow extra bits out of your mesh. And then OR for rotate, which you can try now. That just rotates. That makes sense, right? If you press OR again while you're rotating, you can actually rotate on another axis, or another two axes actually. So you can rotate things any which way. All right, so now we're going to start on our epic mission to make a can. So I'm going to leave this up here, and we'll get. I'll maybe log into one of these computers. Actually, no, I'll switch back and forward between these things. Now, to use Blender, it's really helpful to have a full keyboard. That's a keyboard with a numpad. If you're using a laptop and don't have a numpad, just raise your hand. All right, you guys are in for a blast. Does everyone have a mouse? Does your mouse have 3 buttons? Is there a scroll wheel in it? Yes?
I have a trackpad.
You have a trackpad. Oh, you're going to have so much fun. It's actually, if you can use it in another computer, I'd recommend it. Using a trackpad with Blender is an Apple trackpad might be okay. The other ones, not so much. Okay, so.
Can you steal a mouse from one of these?
Yeah. Steal a mouse if you need it. If you want to plug them in, I think they're USB mice. I think. Yeah. So just if you want to stick on your laptop, just grab a mouse, pull it out, and plug it in. So I'll just open up Blender here so I get to the kind of same level that you guys are at. I'm not actually sure what the default is on 2.52. If you look up here on the kind of top, it'll be in the middle. It should say Blender render on this section here. Yeah? Okay, if it says anything else, if it says cycles render or Blender game, just click the drop down, change it to Blender render. Just to make sure we're all on the same page, we'll just file new, open up a new scene. And I'm just going to explain the basics of this interface now, what this all means. Okay, so we have our object view here, this thing in the middle, our 3D view. We can see into the 3D world. Right now, in our 3D world, we have a cube. We have this thing here, which you can also select with right-click. That's our camera. All right. And then we have this guy over here, this dot, which is a light. I believe that's a point light. So if we were to render out an image, we would render out from that camera's view. So whatever that camera sees is what would be rendered out. If you want to see what that camera is seeing, press 0 on the numpad. Not on the top, 0 on the numpad. And that should bring you that. Right? So you can see through the camera. Does that make sense?
What are the crosshairs in the middle of the screen? Like
the crosshairs? That's a good question. That's the 3D cursor, which is what happens when you left click on things. So the 3D cursor is just a way to mark a point in 3D space so that when you add things, that's the point at which they will get added to. That makes sense? For the people that don't have a numpad, so yourself, if you go into File and User Preferences, yeah. I think there is input and emulate numpad. There you go, so just close that now. And now you can use your nums on the top, so just press 0. I think we're good, that's fine for you now, yeah. Cool. So everyone see this?
Yep.
Excellent. So that's what you. That's how you'll get your camera view. Now there's a whole bunch of other views. If you press 1, you'll get front view. So that's from the front. So we think there's 3 axes. Okay. Blender. This is a whole nother discussion, right? Which we won't get into today, but just trust me. The up axis is the Z axis. All right, you might think that the inward axis is the Z axis. In Blender, no. The up axis is the Z axis. All right, and then the other 2 axes are, you know, if you were looking at a top-down view, and the way you would look top-down is press 7 on the numpad, and you'll get a top-down view. And they're your X and Y axes, right? When you're, make sense to people? Yep, cool. Okay, you can also press 5 on your numpad. And that will change it between perspective view and orthographic view. All right. It's generally easy to model in ortho mode. Perspective just adds a perspective, right? It's like isometric in 2D, right? It gets rid of the perspective, making it easier to draw things out. All right. So what we'll do is we'll select our cube. All right, and then we'll press the X key and delete it. So just left click to select that after you press X and delete it, or press return. That should delete it. All right. So now we've got nothing. If we look through our camera, there's nothing to see. We've nothing there. For people who have left-clicked somewhere by accident, you won't see your crosshairs in the middle anymore of that camera. That's okay, just left-click and put the crosshair back there. The crosshair looks like it's on the red and the green axes, but it might not actually be the case. It's really hard to actually select a point in 3D space. So the way to know for sure, just press 1 and make sure you're in ortho mode. And make sure it's in the middle of that axis too, right? And then press 3, and it's in the middle there. And 7, and it's in the middle there. Right. So it should be right bang in the middle now.
Is there something that tells you whether you're in ortho or?
Yes, top left. You won't see it in camera view, but if you're anywhere else, it'll say front persp if you're in perspective, and front ortho if you're in orthographic. Okay, so I will stick to orthographic if we can today. All right, so we're going to go to top view now, which is press 7. And then press Shift A, and this is our add menu. So we can add all sorts of meshes here. And I'm going to explain exactly what a mesh is in a second now. But for now, we're going to select plane. And a plane is a 2D object. If we go to front view, it's like invisible. You can't even see it. It's just flat. Now, if we look through the camera with 0, we can see it's like just flat, right? It's a floor. So, by pressing Tab, once you have you can go into any view you like. I'd say top would probably be the best. 7 is top. And then press, with the plane selected, that square, press Tab on your keyboard, and we'll go into what's called Edit View. All right. Now you'll know if you're in Edit mode if you see just here, it'll say Edit. If you press Tab again, you'll come back out to Object mode. All right. So in Edit mode, this is where we actually change our mesh, and a mesh is basically just a thing in 3D space, all right? And it's made up of vertices, which are single points, and you can actually select individual points when you're in edit mode, right? So each one of those is a single vertex. You can also, if you look down here, we're in vertex select mode. We could change it to face select or side select. What a face is a face is when there's 3 or more vertices and together, and you join them up in the middle, and it makes a face or a side or an edge, whatever you want to call it. In Blender they call it a face. It's a polygon, right? It's just a filled piece. Does that make sense to everyone? Now what we're going to do is we're going to tap A to select all the vertices, right? And then we're going to press this is back to our keyboard shortcuts, S for scale, and make sure you're in top ortho mode if you're not, right? Just go back to, the way you go into top ortho mode is you press 7 on your numpad. Make sure you're in edit mode here, and everything is selected. The way you select everything is press the A key, and it's orange if it's selected, right? Then just press S on your keyboard and scale it up as big as you can. Just fill the window there. Okay. Now can everyone see that? You should be able to see the camera clearer now in your window, right? Okay, excellent. So just tab out and make sure you're back in, whoops. Tab out and you're in object mode. Now if that's not working like it wasn't for me, make sure your mouse cursor is in that 3D viewport area. It's not down in this section or over in this section. Your cursor has to be in here when you press edit. So you should be back in object mode now with a nice big square. Is everyone on the same page? Excellent. So this is going to be the floor that our can is going to sit on. It's going to be super reflective and it's going to be great. What we want to do is just move the camera into a better position. All right. So in object mode, we're going to right click to select our camera. All right. Now you can move it, if you remember, by tapping G and then just, moving it to a different position. Let's put it like in the middle of our square, something like that. We'll just rotate it to face the middle as well, so it's straight ahead like that, or to rotate. All right. Everyone got something like that? Cool. If anyone's lost, please do just raise your hand, okay? Now we'll just press 3 on our numpad. And if that's not working, again, make sure your cursor is in the 3D viewport. Okay, now you can see better here that your camera is actually facing down a bit, right? We want it to be a bit more straight on. So we'll rotate it again, just press R to rotate, and you can move that camera so it's facing forward, like that, okay? And then we'll grab it and actually move it down a bit further, so it's something like that. Okay, so in top view with 7, it should look something like that, and then in right view by pressing 3, you should get something like that. Yeah, Control Z should undo. Yep. Okay, so if we press 0 and look through our camera, it might not be like totally straight, okay? So if you're looking through your camera and you've got an orange thing, that means the camera is still selected while you're looking through it, which means that if you or to rotate, you're actually rotating the camera while you're looking through it, okay? So you can straighten things up that way, if they're not straight already. All right? All right, so now what we're going to do is go back into top view by pressing 7. And just put our 3D cursor back in the middle. And the way we do that is just left click in the middle so your crosshairs go in the middle there. Then we'll go into front view, make sure it's in the middle again. And we'll go to side view and make sure it's in the middle. So front view is 1 and side view is 3 on your numpad. So just make sure that 3D cursor is in the middle. There is another way to do this, but we'll just keep it straightforward now. Put your 3D cursor back in the middle. Now we're going to add another object. So far we've got our floor. Now we're going to start the base of our can. Okay? So the way we do that is Shift A, and you'll get your add menu again. And this time we're going to add in a circle. I was thinking of changing it up, but no, we'll do a circle. So you might not even see your circle now if you're in right or side view, okay? Or front view or right view. But if you press 7, you should see your circle there. All right. Now, in the left-hand pane, you'll see you've got this Add Circle menu. And it says the number of vertices in that circle is 32. We just want to change that all the way down to 10. Okay, if you don't see that, if this is not there for you, just Control Z to undo until your circle is gone and add it again. So I'll just get rid of my circle and add it again, just for those who missed it. So right now I have my add circle. If I click somewhere else, select something else and go back to the thing, I won't be able to change what that value is here. So does everyone have a circle that's got 10 vertices in it? Excellent. Okay, so now we're going to go to we'll go to front view, which is 1. All right. And it's like that circle's like really far away, so we can zoom in. And the way we zoom in is you use the scroll wheel on your mouse. So you zoom in with that. If you're on a keyboard, if you're using the Mac trackpad, you just pinch, right? Pinch to zoom in, or outward pinch, whatever that motion is called. You can zoom in. Just make sure you're in right or front view again by pressing 1 or 3 on your trackpad. So you've got something like that. All right. Now we're going to go into edit mode. So you should see edit mode here. The way we do that is press tab. Cool. Now if you want to reposition the stuff in that window, what I want to do is I want to have this thing, instead of being right in the middle of that 3D viewport, I want to just move it down so it's near the bottom. The way we do that is Shift. Actually, I haven't done this on a mouse in a while. Let me just make sure I'm doing it right.
You said that.
Yeah. So Shift and middle mouse button, and you should be able to move the whole viewport around. Does make sense? Is that working for people? Now, if you've gone all funny, if you've used the middle mouse and this kind of crazy stuff is happening now, that's okay. Just press 3 and go back to this view, and then hold Shift and move around, and you should be able to move it. So you move around with the middle. You press down your scroll wheel and move it around while you're holding Shift. All right. If that craziness is happening, this kind of craziness, that seems to be happening to people as I look around. That's what's happening to people. 3, to go back to here, hold Shift first, then hold your middle mouse button and just move your mouse around, and it should reposition there. Is that working? Yeah.
Anytime I press 1 or 3, it doesn't actually
yeah, just put your cursor back into the 3D viewport and then try it. It should work for you then. Holy moly. They're feeding people as well. This is magnificent. All right, some people seem to be flustered here at this point. That's okay. That's probably my fault. So is 3 or 1 working for people? I'm noticing people are not in side view or front view. So it looks like you might be in perspective mode there. Just press 5. Yeah, that's better. So if you're not sure if you're in perspective or ortho, just check the top left. And it should say right ortho. It should say ortho or persp. Right, you want to be in ortho. Okay, we'll power ahead. If you have any questions, just stop me, okay? So you should all have something similar to this. Now what we're going to do is we're going to, if you remember, that's not a line, that's a circle. So we're just going to extend that circle up and make it into a can, okay? The way we do that is we extrude. So we're going to just make a whole new mesh out of the mesh we already have. So we'll press E to extrude, and then move your mouse, and you should see you've got mesh happening here. Yeah, perfect. Now what we'll do is, don't click, just make sure you can still move it around with your mouse, all right? Just press Z on your keyboard, and it should be constrained to that Z axis now. It should only move up and down on that axis and no other point. Is that okay? All right, great. So what we want to do is we want to move it up a little, just about that much. So what we're actually building now is the bottom of the can. If you think how the can kind of comes out at the bottom, right? It's like comes out and then it goes up and then it comes in at the top, all right? So we're building that first bit at the bottom. So think about how high you want that bit to be. So I'm going to say around here, okay? And then when you've selected the place, you left click to keep it there. So E, yeah, and then just up, and then Z to constrain it to the Z axis. Okay, so just right click your circle then.
It's not working.
Okay, you're in edit mode now. That's the reason. So we'll just come out of edit mode, and then we can select that and back into edit mode.
Okay.
Okay, so we had a good question there. Basically, somebody had their plane selected like that. And they couldn't, any changes they were making weren't actually working. So first of all, just if you're in edit mode, if it's not working for you and you're in edit mode, just come out of edit mode into object mode by pressing tab. Then right click on your circle to select that, and then tab into edit mode on your circle. Right, making sense? So we should be in edit mode now. We should have the bottom of our can, and we should have the top part of our can selected, and you can tell it's selected if it's orange. So now we want to make that bottom part of the can out a bit so it's wider than the rest of the can. The way we do that is we S for scale, right? And then you should have this kind of thing happening. Is that happening for people? Or is the whole thing changing? Yeah. So if that's working, just make it maybe like that much, we'll say, and then just click. All right, I noticed some people over on this side are getting lost a bit. Let's have a look, it's all right. Good stuff, good stuff. All right, so you just need to select everything on the top here. So just right click to select the, yeah. And then just zoom in by your scroll wheel. So okay, so you're gonna have a hard time. So just shift and right click each of the individual ones on the top.
Okay.
All right, good stuff, excellent. How are you getting on?
That's
all right. So just going to come out here, just delete that. Something like that, all right?
Okay,
cool, so we should all be around this point now. I think we've caught up. Is everyone on this side okay? You got something like this? Close enough. All right, just stop me if anyone needs help, okay? Now what we're going to do is extend the can upwards. If you remember, it's E to extrude. So we'll press E and then just move our mouse up. And it should be coming up like that. All right, and then remember to press Z, and you can constrain it to the Z axis, so it'll only move up on that Z axis. Okay. Now you can zoom out a bit if you want. Right, so obviously that's not as high as we want our can to be. I had to zoom out to make more room. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just grab and I'll pull that up a bit further. Okay, So I'll grab and pull it up a bit further like that. And I'm gonna, while I'm in grab mode and I'm pulling it up further, I can also press Z and restrict it to that Z axis. Okay, so just kind of make it as high as you want the can to be. If you're struggling to actually click to leave it in a point, it might be because you're clicking outside of the 3D viewport. So just make sure when you left click to leave it at a point that your cursor is still inside this darker gray square. All right, guys, this is like the hardest part, and we're almost done. All right. So we've got our can. Now what we can do is, remember those tools that I showed you earlier? We've got, the most important ones are E for extrude, S for scale, and G for grab. So we can extrude mode here. Now what you might be noticing is our can is very, like not round. That's a pretty square can, but that's okay, we can fix that. There's a little trick. We're going to do a couple of things, but one of the tricks we're going to do is we're going to use smooth shading. So on the left hand side in this object tools bar, you should see an option for shading, and you can select smooth. And now it's,
So
really smooth and really shitty looking. But that's okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add in some more. If we press Z and you can see our wireframe, you can see this is all the vertices that we've used to build up our can, and there's not much there. There's not much detail there. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to add in a whole bunch of detail without doing any of the work. We're going to do what's called a subdivision surface. So we're going to just subdivide each of those planes, each of these faces into smaller pieces to give more geometry. So the way we do that is in this toolbar on the right hand side, along the top there's got a bunch of icons, and we're going to select the one with the spanner. I don't know tools, that's a spanner, right? Now you're going to see add modifier. So click that, and in this drop down you've got a whole billion things here. What we're just going to use is called subdivision surface, second from the bottom in the generals, or in the generate section. So we're going to select subdivision surface there. And now our can has more geometry, but it's also changed shape a bit. Well, that's okay, we'll fix that in a second. Everyone got something like this? Yep. Okay, if we want even more geometry, what we can do is, we've got some options here, subdivisions. We can put more subdivisions in, right? And you can see, I'll give you an understanding of what this is actually doing. It's adding in more geometry and more detail. So we can come back, hover your mouse over this here and press Z. So you're so you're in this view, and you should be able to see the difference by going up in the view count, right? So we'll keep it to level, let's say view 2, all right? We'll leave the view 2 and render 2. And now our can is kind of this weird shape. It's not like a can anymore. Something has kind of gone wrong. So we're going to add in some geometry manually to fix this up, all right? So we're going to go back into edit mode by pressing tab. And you'll notice when we're in edit mode, it's our original geometry back. And that's because subdivision surface is doing some trickery. It does it after the fact. And our original model will actually stay the same. So this is the geometry of our model. And you'll see what the subdivision surface has done is it's actually kind of pulled averages out, and we've rounded everything off, which is kind of handy for some things, but not exactly what we want to do here. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in some more geometry to even things out. And the way we do that is just press A, make sure you're in edit mode, press A until everything is selected. If you press A and it doesn't happen, just press it again, all right? Press it one more time. So we want to have nothing selected, all right? So there should be no orange here. Now what we're going to do is control, hover your mouse so it's in the middle of our can here. And then we're going to control OR. And you should see a purple line like that. All right? So just left click to select your line. And then you can actually move that all the way up to the top and left click again. Now you'll see that that's actually stopped that rounding happening up the top. All right? Awesome. So if that's happened, that's cool. Just that kind of thing, and just put another one in there.
And that was
Control OR. Yeah, and just push it up the top. All right, now what we're going to do is press A again so there's nothing orange, and then do the same thing again, Control OR, click, and bring this one down to the bottom. Oh, that's excellent. You got a vertical purple line. That's okay. That's all right. There you go. So just move your mouse and it'll put the purple line in the right place. So what happened to Maeve there is she went Control OR, and she got one of those went down. That's not what we want. So just move your mouse around until it's in the right place. Should be something like that. All right, so we could totally put more detail into this can if we wanted, but honestly, it's looking pretty canny. Right? So what we could do, for example, you don't have to do this, but if you were to put in more detail, what I might do is I might put in another bit of geometry there and scale it in so it's a bit more rounded on the bottom like that, you know, gives that canny bit. You don't have to, right? But we're starting to look like a can, at least. People got this? Has anybody got that? I'll be really impressed if we've got like half the people at this point. Excellent. I've seen loads of can-shaped objects out there. This is really cool. Okay, so now what we're going to do is press 0 and look through our camera again. That's 0 on the numpad, not 0 along the top. So when we look through our camera now, we might not have all of the can in there. Oops. That's okay. What we're going to do is just press 7 to go into top view. Select the camera and just move it back a bit. All right. Now that's a bit of a pain. You've got to press 7 to go into top view. You've got to right click, select your camera. You've got to press G. You've got to move your camera back. It's like so many steps. What you can actually do is through the camera by pressing 0. Make sure it's orange around there. If it's not, just right click on the border there and get it selected. All right. Through the camera you can control the camera. You can move its position. So what you do is you'd press G and you'll see you can move the camera up, down, left and right. Okay. Before you press left click to select it, you could press G again. Yes, there you go. And then press the axis you want to move it along. So you can press X, Y or Z and restrain it to only move on that axis. So you'd press G to move the camera, then X, Y or Z, and the camera will only move along that axis. Does that make sense? And remember, Z is up, just trust me. Okay? So this is now you can get artistic, you can frame it any way you like, okay? I'm just going to break the rules and put it right in the middle of my frame. Get something like that, okay? So that is the basics of 3D modeling. You have made a can and you have positioned your camera in such a way that you can see it in the frame there. Now that's awesome. That's really good. So what we're going to do now is we're going to render out our first image and see what our can is going to look like. All right? So the way we do that is along the top here you've got a whole bunch of icons. Thanks. Just press the camera one up there. Just left click to select it. And you'll see you have a render option here. So that's going to do some calculations and spit out your finished render. Right? So you're all going to have slightly different looking things when you do that. So to do that again, I'll just click the camera icon up here on the top right and then press render here. And it should spit out a fully rendered can from the view through your camera. So what have people got here? Looking good. I'll explain what's happening there with your one in a sec.
Just images?
Yeah, image. It might be the word image if it doesn't have render. All right, excellent guys, it's looking really good. Now, a few of you have a problem. A few of you have a problem with your render in that it's not showing up properly. Okay, it's got weird black lines coming down the side. Is anyone having that problem? Yeah, that's completely fine. Okay, just press escape to come back out into this view. Cheers, guys. Escape to come back out of this view. Select your can again by right-clicking it. Yeah. Yeah, cool. Right, so once that's selected, I think you might have to do this in edit view. Let me just double check. Yeah. Okay, so go into edit mode by pressing tab. So you've got this guy again. Select everything by pressing A until it's all orange. And then in this sidebar here, if you scroll down, you should have normals. Just click recalculate. Recalculate there. All right. Now when you go back to render, those black lines should be gone. All right. Perfect. So what that's actually doing is the normal is the direction in which your face was facing. Okay. That means the pieces that we had here, they only actually have stuff on one side. The other side is completely black. Okay. So we just recalculated the normals, so they're all those faces were facing the right direction. And the reason that happened is we started with a circle and went up, but that doesn't matter. Okay. Has anyone still got those black lines in their render? No? Excellent. All right. So we should have something like this. Now that looks kind of artsy and stuff. Isn't that cool? But the lighting doesn't really, it's not a great product shot, right? We can't see our can very well. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to put some new lights in here and get a different kind of effect. All right. So you can play around with this, but the gist of it is press escape to come here, back to this. And we'll press 7 to go into top view. All right, now if you're in edit mode, just press tab to come out to object mode here. And what we're going to do, you'll notice there's only one light. It's this thing here. And that's the reason you're getting that big shadow over one side, okay? What you can do is you can press G and you can move that light somewhere else. So let's put it the same side that the camera's on, right? We put it there. And then we render out our image again, we're going to get something like that. It's going to look different. Okay, so we put the light in a different place. That makes sense for people? Yeah?
I cancel that. I like source and I like that.
Just go out of edit mode, just press tab. Yeah, and then you should be able to. And then G to move it, and just move it wherever's handiest, or wherever you want to try if you want to see what it looks like. Fine? Excellent. So you have something like that. Now what we're going to do is, does anyone do photography? Yeah? One person? The guy who uses Blender anyway? We got some photography here. Okay, so basically there's a thing in product photography, and studio photography in general really, called 3-point lighting. It's really basic. We're going to do 2 of the 3 points of lighting today, okay? I want to have some backlight in here. And the reason is, if we look at our render, we've got these black lines down each side, right? We want to fill that out, and we put some backlighting in there to fix that up. So what we can do is Shift A to add, and you can see if you come down here, you've got lamp, and there's a whole bunch of lamps you can choose from. So what we have already is we have one point light in our scene, and point lights are okay, but you don't have much control of them. So what we're going to do is actually use an area lamp. All right. Now that area lamp is going to appear wherever your 3D cursor was. So if you had your 3D cursor somewhere, that's where your lamp's going to be. So just move it to the back by pressing G and putting it over to the back there. All right. And go into side view. Now the difference between a point lamp and an area lamp, a point lamp is just going to radiate light out in every which direction. It's a single little point and it shoots light out in every way. Kind of like a light bulb, a single light bulb. It'll just bounce light every which direction. Okay. What we have made now is an area lamp which if you think of it like a big square of LEDs, it's just going to kind of boom light out in one direction, a big plate square of LEDs. That's what we're doing here. And that line is showing the direction that the light is going to face. So we want it to actually point our can, right? So we're going to just rotate it so the light is coming towards the can like that. All right. Now, remember, rotate is OR, so just tap OR and then move that. So the lamp has towards the can. Perfect. Perfect. So just, sorry? Shift A to add, and then lamp here. So we're using an area lamp. Okay. Yeah. So just move it there so it's something like that. Now the area lamp, if we can see now, there's an option up on the top right that looks like some kind of light source. So click on that. And we have a whole bunch of things we can do to our lights here, okay? What we want to do is we want to change the size, the shape of our lamp. We want to make it really big. Right now it's a little square. We want to make it a big square. Okay, so this will make more sense now in a second, okay? But what we want to do is make sure you've clicked up on the top right there, this lamp section, okay? We're going to turn the distance down to a value of, say, 10. Okay, and then down here under area shape, we're going to give it a size of, let's see, I'll give it 7. Or give it whatever size is like the height of the can, right? Cool. Okay, so you should have something like that. Make sure that the line from your light is coming about that much out the other side of your can. Okay? If it's not, just kind of either move the lamp or change this distance value here. Alright, we're going to go to top view now. So press 7 on your numpad. Now that's not exactly where I want my light, and that's why you change views to get it better, because it's really hard to position stuff in 3D space, so you have to keep changing your views. So press 7 to go into top view, and I'm actually going to move it somewhere like that. Okay, so it's kind of hitting the side but from the back. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I want to have the same thing on the other side. So we're going to have our camera coming from this direction. I want to have one light hitting the back side there, and then another light on this side, on the right side here. Okay, so I'm going to press 7 to go back into top view. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm just going to duplicate that light. I'm just going to copy paste. Okay, and the way you do that is you shift, make sure the light's selected, press Shift D to duplicate it, and then you can just move it around somewhere else. So I'm going to move it to about here. All right. And then I'm going to rotate it back in that way. Let's see how that's looking. Okay, so despite the fact that the floor now looks like shit, we've got bounce light, we've got backlight lighting up the side of our cans. Awesome. So that's looking, the can itself is looking a lot better now. Surprisingly. We're getting there, right? So you can get the gist of how much changing the lighting changes the look of your scene. When we first rendered out, it looked really kind of dramatic. We had these long shadows. It looked kind of dark and eerie, and if that's the look you're going for, perfect. Okay, we're trying to look for a product shot type thing. We want even lighting, which is why we use those nice big area lamps. I would generally change the point lamp that I have for the front light to an area lamp as well. I'm not going to bother today, but you want even lighting. So if we zoom out on the top of our scene, there's not much in our scene right now. We've got our camera, we've got 3 lights, we got the floor, and we've got our can. And you've noticed, you might ask, why haven't we modeled the top and the bottom of our can? Why haven't we put the ring pull and stuff? Because the camera doesn't see it. So Why would you bother? And that's the thing that people don't realize when they watch movies. Most of the stuff is just not modeled because you don't see it. Well, I say most, that's not true. But stuff that you don't see, they don't bother modeling it. So we're not going to bother, there's no point. If we were going to do an animation and we were going to move the camera from the top and then pull down like that, something like that, then of course we'd have to model it. But we're doing a still image from the front. We don't need to model that ring pull. All right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to make some changes to that floor to make it really like a mirror. So it's going to be like that can is sitting on a mirror. And this is called materials. So we're going to give that floor a material. So what we're going to do is just select the floor, right click to select it. And then we're going to check the materials section here. So that's that icon over there. Material. Okay? Now if you don't see this circle, then just press new, right? Or whatever the option is there, yeah. Yeah, so you should get that. So, what we can do, if we scroll down here, you'll see there's an option for mirror. Okay, so we're going to tick that box, and if it's not dropped down, we'll just drop it down there. Okay? Now there's some options here and they look a bit scary and it's like what the hell is, what's this shading and all that other stuff. For now we're going to ignore them, so you can just close them up, pretend they don't exist. Okay, we're just going to focus on mirror now to keep things straightforward. Now there's still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 10 options there, right? You just want a mirror. Why is it so confusing? Are people up at this point? Are people seeing this?
Can't find
It's no, sorry, that one. Yeah, yeah, and then press new. Yeah. Okay, so what we want is this option is reflectivity. Okay, we want this to be 100% reflective. We want it to be a mirror. Okay, 100% reflective. So we'll just drag that slider all the way to the end, or just click it and press 1. Right, you want it to be 100% reflective. Okay. Now if we render, now there's a shortcut I didn't tell you guys to render. If you're on a keyboard. Press F12. That should just render out the image for you. Right, and do you see the reflective thing? Yeah. So we're getting our light bounce there. We can take that out after the fact, okay? But if you want, but we're getting some reflectivity. Now, what I've done in my, or what Andrew did in his tutorial, which I think is a good idea, is he gave it a bit of, he gave that reflectivity a bit of what they in Blender call gloss, okay? The way you change that is this gloss amount here is 1. We're just going to bring it down to say 0.9, okay? Thereabouts. And if you render that out again by pressing F12, you'll notice the reflection now is like softer. It's not a hard 100% reflection. It's still 100% reflective, but it's a softer reflection now. It's like there was a bit of sandpaper brought on the glass, right? Just to kind of. Cool? Awesome. So finally, the last bit we're going to do is we're going to put a label on our can. All right. This is super easy. All we're going to do is we're going to get an image and just wrap it around the outside of that can. Right. It's a pretty straightforward image. We're just going to wrap it straight around, cylindrically around that can. Okay. So what you can do is I'm going to put a link up to the actual image that I used. This one here. All right, that's the thing that was wrapped around the can. I'll put up a link to that and you can download it. Or if you're feeling adventurous, you can open up GIMP and make your own little can label now. But let me just put this link up now on the screen. Oh God. What's a free link shortener that's just so I don't need to sign it?
GG.gg.
Holy shit, it's kitchen. All right, so tinyurl.com/K9 kitchen with a 9 instead of an I. Does that actually work? That's amazing. Yeah. Okay, so for those that didn't get it, it was tinyurl.com/K9TCHEN. All right, so just save that image onto your desktop or wherever. Okay, right click and save it. And we'll pop back into Blender. Okay, has everyone got that image downloaded? Perfect, sweet. So just press 0 on the numpad to look through the camera again. Yep. K9TCHEN. tinyurl.com/K9TCHEN. Okay, so press 0 on your numpad so you're looking through the camera at your can. Okay. Right click on your can to select the can. Just type it in there.
Which is it? Oh, okay.
It's tinyurl.com/K9TCHEN. All right, so now we're going to add what's called a texture. So remember earlier on I said a texture is a raster image that we're wrapping around our vector can. So one way to explain it, okay? So make sure your can is selected. Right click. Make sure you're in object mode. Okay? Then press the checkered icon up on the top right of your of this menu here. And you should see something like this. You might already have a material there that looks, yeah. So just press the X here. Right? So if you see something like this, that's okay. Just press this X here and delete it. All right. So everybody should be on this page now. Just add a new one. The type by default should be clouds. We don't want a cloud texture. What we want is an image from our computer. So we're going to click on clouds and change it to image or movie. Okay, and if we scroll down now, you can see there's a section for image, so we can get our image in there. So we'll just tap on, oh, we don't want to tap new, we want to tap open. And then just navigate to find that can label. And once you've selected it, you should see it in the preview window there like that. Yeah? Sweet. Cool. So now just scroll down in this section here. And you should see an option for image mapping. No, sorry, it's not image mapping, it's just mapping. So it should have coordinates and it'll say view. We're going to change that to tube. All right, because our can is effectively a tube. There is a whole other thing that I'm skipping over now, right, which is called UV unwrapping, which is basically when you get your model and you like flatten it out, right? You like fold it out. If it's a cube, you'd fold it out into an open box, right? And then you map that and then you apply the image on top of that. We don't need to do that because it's a fairly generic shape. It's just a tube. We're going to select this option here, coordinates tube. Okay, so now if we F12, we probably don't have anything. because I missed a step. So what we got to do first, before we add our texture, is we should have selected our can here. And we've got to add a material to the can first. So add a material here. Make sure it has a material, press new. And then change into our texture and add in our image.